We're going to talk to him about the Carolina Panthers, who have been super busy. Johnny Hekker is out at punter. Sam Martin is in. That's right, Sam, a new punter. But they've remade their defensive line. They added an outside linebacker. They added a safety. They added a ton of stuff. And they just yesterday signed Rico Dowdle, running back who had over 1,300 yards from scrimmage for the Cowboys last year, and he will share the backfield with Chuba Hubbard. Julian Council, Locked On Panthers podcast, joining us now on the Adam Gold Show. So have they checked all the boxes for you so far in this offseason, now that we've gotten into the free agency period?
I think as far as free agency goes, yes, defensively, going out there, and obviously the Milton Williams signing would have been massive for them. Yeah. But if you look at it, the money that they saved, and it was 4 years, $104 million for Milton Williams that he got up there in New England, $26 million per year, which, by the way, would have been more than what Derrick Brown's getting, which he's getting right now is $24 million. I don't know how you could have justified paying Milton Williams more than Derrick Brown, who is one of the faces of your franchise and also has been a Pro Bowler, something Milton Williams has not been yet, but he is Super Bowl champion and is a solid player, and the Patriots are paying him for what they think he's going to do for them moving forward. Like, they saved that money, and they were able to then go out there and sign Bobby Brown III to be a run stopper on the interior to replace Shai Tuttle as that starting nose tackle. They're able to sign Tershawn Wharton, who led the Chiefs in sacks last year, if you want to count the postseason at 8.5, and having that interior pass rush. With A'Shaun Robinson coming back, and a year ago he had his best season as a pass rusher from the interior. And then they also signed Patrick Jones II. That's three guys that you would not have been able to sign had they Carolina gone out there and been able to get Milton Williams and won that bidding war. So I look at the interior defensive line. I feel like they've added enough pieces there. Potentially they could draft someone. They did just draft Jaden Crumedy a year ago, who's still a developmental kind of player for them, as he was a 6th-round pick out of Mississippi State. Edge rusher, I'm not overwhelmed by the talent level in that group. Jones, much like DJ Wonnum a year ago, is an upside kind of guy. So I do think they're better than they were last year, but still I'm not overwhelmingly impressed by that unit. It's nice to have Wharton as an interior pass rusher who can help supplement the edge rush, or like just a pass rush overall in Carolina. And then when you get Trevon Moore at safety and you bring back Mike Jackson and you also add in Roseboom there at linebacker, it feels like every spot so far on the defense, I mean, truly every spot on the defense has been addressed. So right now you could probably go best player available, with edge likely being the top priority defensively in the draft. And then offensively, you got your running back as far as backing up Chuba and making probably one of the most underrated duos in the NFL, Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle at that running back spot. But they still need a wide receiver. And it's good to hear Thielen's coming back for 12th season. But I look at it, it would be nice to elevate that group. I just don't know if anyone out there is truly going to do that heading to 2025. So that may be, come draft time, another spot they want to look at.
Julian Council, Locked On Panthers podcast, is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. I saw one mock draft had the guy, Austin Chenti from Boise State, being drafted by the Panthers, and I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Oh, my gosh. It was just so silly. So do you think best player available could also mean a wide receiver?
It could. I don't think this is the best receiver class, just from my college football watching self, who never really thinks about, oh, how good is this guy going to be on Sundays? I watch it just for the love of college football and not the NFL draft analysis of it all. But now looking at it, I don't look at any of these guys and think that they're necessarily going to be those top-tier receivers, a top 15 guy in the NFL once they get in there. I know Tedder McMillan is someone out of Arizona who I've seen who's been mocked to Carolina. He does add that size as far as being a 6'5" guy and has excellent ball skills. And if you watch him against Travis Hunter, who is the best corner and probably the best wide receiver in this draft class, who's not going to be there available at 8, he did a hell of a job against him when they were matched up when Arizona and Colorado played this past season. I really like what I saw out of Matthew Golden at Texas at the end of the year. I know he had a great combine. That's somebody that people are thinking may end up being a first-round pick now. Emeka Egbuka has more receptions than anyone in the history of The Ohio State University, so you can't overlook him. Luther Burden was a dog at Missouri, was a 5-star coming out of high school, really good player. I just don't know if I see any of those guys coming in and fulfilling kind of that X-receiver, number one receiver role that Carolina would want. Possibly it could be Golden. So I don't know if at 8 that's what they should be looking for. They got a receiver last year in Coker as the undrafted free agent, but also, of course, we get in the first round. And those two showed promise their first year. It would make sense that they're going to probably have to draft somebody in order to be able to get that A1 type of receiver. As you're seeing, those guys just aren't really coming available. And if they are, you're having to spend $30 million per year looking at what happened with Pittsburgh and DK Metcalf. So drafting and developing is like what they got to do at wide receiver. I just don't know if at 8 that is the choice for them as things sit right now.
Julian Council, Locked On Panthers podcast, joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. So put on your Dan Morgan hat. I don't know what that would look like, by the way. And tell me the position that you believe right now needs to be addressed if you are the Panthers.
Yeah, I don't think Dan Morgan's much of a hat guy.
Probably not.
Like the head shape for a hat.
You think he's a visor guy?
Maybe. Like he kind of has like that linebacker head. Like, you know what I'm talking about? I'm just saying, like he looks, and we know he played linebacker, but he just doesn't look like a hat kind of guy. Like the only hat he's wearing is a helmet. Visor? No, I don't think Dan's a visor guy. Definitely not a visor dude. But as far as the positions that, edge rusher to me. Receiver, just talked about that. You can make the argument that they're fine there. You bring back David Moore, who was a pleasant surprise last year, and you get Xavier Legette back after a full offseason, though there's questions of how available he's going to be recovering from that foot surgery that he had this past season. And then you look at Coker, like they're probably, you could argue they're going to be fine. Now, will they be good at receiver? And I wouldn't think so, but good enough possibly. And especially if you can add somebody at tight end, like with JT Sanders getting his second year of development, that will help. Dowdle can catch ball at the backfield as well as he did that in Dallas. Overall pass game probably be okay, but they would still need to look at that down the road. But edge rusher to me, I just don't see a guy up there that frightens anybody. Maybe once upon a time, Jadeveon Clowney was that guy. That's just not the case anymore. I thought he actually was solid last season. But the contract they gave him, for the most part, his numbers were pretty similar to what he put up in Baltimore the year prior. Just didn't have the same sack totals, which I didn't expect that to be the case. But overall, fine player and won him. There's still upside there. Had he played the full season, he probably gets close to the 8 sack total he posted in his final season in Minnesota back in 2023. We'll see what Patrick Jones is able to do after a breakout season. I just don't see anyone, again, who frightens any offensive coordinator or offenses out there and who can challenge. So that's the position I'm looking at. And Jalen Walker out of Georgia, a Salisbury native, he feels like the guy. And I loved his confidence at his pro day yesterday where he was saying a lot of guys are versatile, but not a lot of guys can do multiple things well. I can do that. He can be an every down linebacker on the interior for you down the road, and he can be a situational pass rusher as well. And that's the guy I'm looking at who Carolina at 8 should absolutely want.
Julian Council is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. The Locked On Panthers podcast is appointment listening. Let me ask you about the guys that they re-signed. J.C. Horn, we're not even going to talk about it. He is obviously one of the best. He is being paid like he is the best, and that's great. Mike Jackson was a re-sign. They still need help there, don't they?
Yeah, I would think corner would be a spot that they would draft. You look at right now, JC, Mike, and Shaw Smith-Wade, 5th rounder out of Washington State, who did take over before getting a season-ending injury at the end of last season as the starting nickel. Those would be the 3 guys penciled in, or really sharpied in to start, especially JC and Mike Jackson. But long-term, like the deal with Mike, they can get out of that probably after this upcoming season if he does not continue to play at the level he played at a year ago. And I would think, and I've seen some mock drafts have Carolina in the second round at 57 taking a corner, and they still, I don't believe, have the long-term guide next to JC. And I don't necessarily believe that they have to have that. Mike Jackson could be there for the next 2 years and then maybe get re-signed after that. And if that's the case, like that's 4 years. And you'll take 4 years of a starting corner for you, but trying to find somebody on a rookie deal can come in and rotate on the outside with JC and with Mike would probably be the smartest thing for Carolina once they get to the draft, looking at day 2 as far as a pick there.
So there are some pretty good corners in this draft. I don't think Travis Hunter is going to slide all the way to number 8, but I keep seeing 3 quarterbacks go in the top 3, and I'm blown away by that.
3 quarterbacks?
Yeah.
Who was the third?
Jackson Dart, apparently.
Oh Lord, no one. I guess that's insane.
That is a great response. By the way,
that is the difference between like the draft people and like those who watch college football. Because you ask anybody who watched college, and they're like, "Yeah, Jackson Dart, nice player," but also like Ole Miss spent a ton of money to be able to make the playoff, and you can make a pretty big argument that Jackson Dart's a big reason why they didn't make it. Did anyone watch the Florida game? Did you not watch the dumbass decisions he was making at the end of that game?
No, people don't watch tape.
College player, but are we crazy? We're going to hand the keys to the franchise to Jackson Dart, and I'll eat my words if he ends up being a good player. And I would love it for him, truly would. But what are we talking about? That's like when they were saying before the Orange Bowl, oh yeah, Drew Aller, he's going to be the number 3 guy. Have you watched Drew Aller play football? Maybe this season he'll finally look like the 5-star guy that was going to save Penn State. All the Penn State fans are so happy Sean Clifford's gone. But really, Drew Aller, that's your guy? Like that's hilarious. So I love it. It's just, do these people watch these games?
That's amazing. Mock draft season is the best. Julian Council here. Real quick, what do you think about possibly trading back from 8 if you are thinking about, if there's depth in a position that you like, that you need, an edge rusher, or maybe, again, to get a cornerback, because I was, Mike Felder. Mike thinks that Will Johnson is the best cornerback in this draft and not Travis Hunter.
Yeah, I mean, that's not necessarily a hot take. I mean, you watched Will Johnson back when he was healthy in 2023 when Michigan won the national championship, and there was a great argument for that to be the case. And heading into last year, prior to all the injuries and then being banged up, there was still a conversation about whether Will Johnson was the better corner. So I mean, Felder, he knows ball way better than I do, and of course he played the position, so he gets it. But yeah, Will Johnson would be awesome. I mean, that's probably a top 5 talent. I don't know exactly where he's mocked right now. And if you get to the spot where, Mason Graham, if he's up there, you're probably set at defensive tackle right now. If Jalen Walker goes off the board prior to 8, and maybe even Shamar Stewart, who is one of the A&M guys who's blown up because of the combine. Now he's someone who doesn't really have the production. And I've seen people point out, well, Walker only had like 6.5 sacks last year. It's like, yeah, but the dude won the Butkus Award, which goes to the best linebacker in college football. So he's a pretty dang good player.
Yeah.
So let's not sit here and act like he's not one of the best players in this draft just because he didn't have these crazy totals. And we saw Trevon Walker a couple of years ago at UGA, who got drafted number 1 overall, and he's come out and played pretty well for Jacksonville. You don't have to have these insane numbers to be able to be a top 5, top 10 kind of pick, but trading back could make sense. Getting more picks there in the top 100, getting the value of what's there. And from everything I've heard, like this is a draft where like they got like 6, 7 really good players, and after that, it's just okay. So if you're not able to get one of those 6 or 7, why not just trade back, pick up some assets for this year's draft or next year's draft, and then go get somebody who you like, but just don't want to get them as early as 8. I'm not necessarily ever really against trading back because there is value in assets. This is still an organization where I do think they've done a lot to where it's possible in this division to compete, but they're still a ways away from like actually competing for something like the NFC Championship crown. So that wouldn't be a bad idea at all in my eyes, just looking at things right now.
Julian Council, Locked On Panthers podcast. Do you like your guys' chances today against Wake Forest?
Are you talking about the North Carolina Tar Heels?
Yes, that's who's playing Wake Forest today, Julian.
Tech is up against Duke, which
I know.
I'm not even going to pretend like that score line's going on. Cooper Flag just, oh boy. Looks like he just hurt his left ankle.
Yes, he did.
Malik Brown already went out with a shoulder injury.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like Carolina loses that game on Saturday, well, because Duke's obviously a much better team. It's a mismatch. But also the Malik Brown factor. In fact, the guy had, 1-3 all season long, hit 2 in that game. And if he's not going to play tomorrow night, and obviously if Flag is compromised, which when he was out of that game on Saturday, that didn't really have an impact. Duke was able to build their lead.
Yeah.
I think when Cooper Flag was out there in the second half. But the Wake game, I mean, Wake has not played well. I'm very curious how Wake fans feel about Steve Forbes because this is going to be the third third out of 4 years where they've been right there.
Yep.
Come ACC tournament time with a chance to make the tournament. And this is one where they're not as close to the bubble as they've been in recent years. And if they lose their first game, like they lost to Boston College a couple of years ago, and they completely fall apart, I'm very curious to know how Wake fans are going to feel about him moving forward and how much of a pressure cooker next year will be, because this was supposed to be like their year. And I don't know what happened to where Andrew Carr didn't come back. Clearly, they should have kept Boopy Miller, who would have been their lead guard. They haven't really had that this past season. I mean, Carolina's played well since the loss against Clemson. Torvik has them 13th since then. I mean, they're looking like a tournament team, but I'm fully of the belief that they should have to win the ACC tournament.
Yeah, I think they do.
A win against, that's the best, because the only two teams they've beaten that were going to the tournament are UCLA and the American University. They won the Patriot League last night. Like, that should not be enough. Even if Duke loses, you make it a title game. Like, that should not be enough. And, like, of course, it's hard to say if you're able to beat Duke, who I believe is the best team in the country, it's hard to say, like, that's not a team worthy of being in the tournament. But we can't ignore the 4 months of the season. Sure, the last month they played well, but the total body of work has to matter. And unless they get the auto bid, as someone who does love Carolina, I just don't think they're deserving. And I've never felt bad for power conference teams that have all the advantages, every opportunity to pick up quality wins, and they don't do it and they get left out. I'd rather see a mid-major who actually won like 25, 28 games get an opportunity over a power team that just sleptwalked through the season and then finally turned on, decided, oh, wait, we should play hard, we should play smart, we should play together, which is Carolina the last month of the season. So
yeah, well,
we'll see what they do against Wake, but I mean, they got to win they got to win this weekend for me to believe that they should be in. In this year, just because you play in the ACC doesn't mean you get a lot of opportunities to get good wins. Julian Council, Locked On Panthers podcast. Good. Have fun at the game today, man. Thank you so much for coming on. Yeah, thank you, Adam.